Howdy y'all, my name is Dave, this is the Anime Field Guide podcast, and you're listening to The Studio Rundown. This is my series where I take a deeper look into the origins, histories, and business practices of anime production houses across Japan. Today's feature studio is Production I.G. I hope you enjoy. First things first, Production I.G. was founded in December 1987 and is still headquartered in Musashino, Tokyo. We have two founders listed. We have Mitsuhisa Ishikawa. He's an anime producer at Tatsunoko Productions before going freelance in 1987. Tatsunoko Productions itself was established in 1962. This is the studio that gave us Speed Racer, Gatchaman, Time Bokan, Kashan Robot Hunter. Ishikawa-san began his career in 1981 as production assistant on Gold Laitan, The Gold Warrior. After that, he took 10 months off for travel and came back for 1983's Mirai Keisatsu Urashiman, where he was promoted to the production desk. And from 1983 to 87, he worked as a production manager, Mecha Doc, Hikari no Densetsu, and Dotoreman. And in 1987, he of course went freelance because he felt Tatsunoko was becoming too corporate and at the expense of the artists. Moving on to the G of Production I.G., we have Takayuki Goto, known for as a character designer. Goto-san was a salaryman straight out of high school, but wanted a career in animation. So he moved to Tokyo and enrolled in the International Anime Institute. After graduating, he began his career as a key animator at Dragon Production, or then it was called Tama Productions, which are subcontracting studios. He worked on 1981's Miss Machiko over at Studio Pierrot. He undertook projects at Toei with Stop, Hibari-kun in the spring of 1983, and Tatsunoko Productions with Hikari no Densetsu in 1986 as animation direction. 1986 TV series Dotoreman, was his character design debut for episode 7. He was a guest character. There's a show that has like multiple people credited. He also worked on the credit sequences during Dotoreman. His character designer debut began with 1987's Zillion, also by Tatsunoko, which will be very important in about 2 seconds. Other character designer credits come from Blue Seed, Hunter x Hunter 1999, Ghost in the Shell, Standalone Complex, The Second Gig, as well as the Solid State Society film and Appleseed 13. He has been the chief animation director on Kuroko's Basketball, Legend of the Galactic Heroes remake, and Blood Sea. So we got the founders out of the way, and let's talk about Production I.G. So the story really begins as a joint collaboration following the production of the 31-episode TV anime series Zillion at Tatsunoko Productions. Ishikawa had fought hard to be put in charge of this ambitious anime project. He was only 28 years old at the time, and again, he was a freelancer at this point. Zillion was produced out of a branch office and against all odds was a very successful project, both critically and commercially. Once production on Zillion wrapped up, Ishikawa and the team did not want to separate, so he combined the Zillion staff with Takayuki Goto's Studio Chime to form I.G. Tatsunoko, so the I and the G coming from each of their last names. Some further notes on Zillion, Kyoto Animation and its president Hideaki Hata also contributed to the project and subsequently invested in the brand new I.G. Tatsunoko. So Ishikawa was head of production as well as its president, and then Goto-san was put in charge of animation. And so the story goes that Ishikawa kept the Tatsunoko name, so I.G. Tatsunoko would in theory have an easier time getting work thanks to the name recognition. And as such, I.G. Tatsunoko started off as a subcontracting studio under Tatsunoko Studio. So they worked on episodes of Esper Mami and the original Legend of the Galactic Heroes, but they got a big break when Studio Dean offered them the subcontracting job on the production of Mamoru Oshii's Patlabor OVA series and Patlabor the movie, which of course were premier hits for both Oshii and I.G. Tatsunoko. But at the time, being a subcontractor on the project, the monetary returns for I.G. wasn't really going to cut it in the long run. So in June of 1990, Ishikawa formed ING Company Limited, which is an anime planning and production company that manages copyright and invests in productions. So while I.G. Tatsunoko was building its reputation through projects like Patlabor, ING was quietly operating in the background of the contracting and investment end. And this was a tactic from the time at Tatsunoko Productions. Ishikawa observed that they were always making money by managing the rights to the company's original work. And for something like a company like this, it allows an extra investment opportunity. So what Production IG or ING Co. would do is they almost exclusively operated around works produced by IG Tatsunoko. And I say almost exclusively because ING Co. also invested in a little series by Gainax called Neon Genesis Evangelion, which the proceeds from that netted the company a rather pretty penny. And so going back a little bit further, we're talking about Mamoru Oshii's August 1993 Pat Labor the Movie 2. And then shortly after working on that film is when IG Tatsunoko changed its name and logo to Production IG as we know it today. And after Pat Labor the Movie 2 in 1993, you can probably guess what's coming next. Is 1995's theatrical film Ghost in the Shell, directed by Mamoru Oshii, who is an early supporter and a frequent collaborator with IG Tatsunoko. He, again, Pat Labor, Ghost in the Shell. He then returned for a sequel film in 2004, Innocence. Production IG also did Jinro, The Wolf Brigade, Blood the Last Vampire, Sky Crawlers, and Halo Legends. So Ghost in the Shell naturally was, this movie was a big deal and rocketed Production IG into a household name less than a decade really after its founding. And so this, of course, spawned the Ghost in the Shell franchise and television, films. You've got the sequels and the reboots, the video games, the whole shebang. And so ING merged with Production IG in September 2000, establishing Production IG as a subsidiary, which is a big old corporate stuff. So basically the studio and that company was a subsidiary of the planning and production company umbrella. Ishikawa during this time also made some pretty bold moves on the business side of things. He moved the company more and more into copyright management and turned Production IG in both a production company and an investor. So IG also had a direct line to Kodansha, which was the publisher of the Ghost in the Shell manga. And this cut through a lot of bureaucratic hurdles of usual Japanese business dealings and allowed IG to take advantage of the Ghost in the Shell popularity rather quicker with more funding more projects into the franchise. So they were able to do a relatively quick turnaround and keep the hype train going. And at the time, this was kind of upending the traditional production committee approach in that, again, television stations and other companies typically act as clients who contract work out to animation studios. The studio then gets paid a fee for their work, and that's it. No more profits. There's usually not a residuals or merchandising. So the studio usually, like the merchandising is usually held by another company. Like there's another company going, we're going to make the merchandise for this. So here's a little bit of money to put into the pool to create the anime, but then the studio itself doesn't get any of that. So by turning Production IG into an investor, the studio now gets the bonuses of basically paying, essentially in a weird way, it's paying itself to make the cartoon, and then they are reaping benefits of, again, all the things like a typical investor would. In fact, this approach was so successful for them when it came time to produce Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence. Production IG funded the projects almost entirely on its own with additional funding from major Hollywood film companies. Ishikawa and Mamoru Oshii came to the U.S. with the sequel screenplay and pitched it directly to Hollywood without any kind of Japanese advertising agency acting as an intermediary. And so for now, let's back up to 1995 again. Specifically May 1995, Production IG established the subsidiary studio Xebec, and that's X-E-B-E-C, but it's pronounced Xebec. And Xebec's best known for Martian successor Nadeshiko. They made Love Hina, some Zoids, Shaman King, Fafner, To Love Ru, Space Battleship Yamato remakes. Production IG also established a subsidiary in Los Angeles, and so this was Production IG LLC, and this was part of their U.S.-based negotiations rather than go through a third-party agency. So it's this subsidiary Production IG LLC that was basically negotiating with Hollywood. This is also how they negotiated to co-develop and co-produce the television series Immortal Grand Prix, or IGPX, directed by Mitsuru Hongo, and that was with Cartoon Network in 2005. Now, the actual quality of the cartoon, take it or leave it, but the fact that they were able to do this directly and directly negotiate with Cartoon Network was, again, this was something that IG was on the ground, well, I wouldn't say on the ground floor, but they were pretty early on in taking advantage of it. In 1997, the company invested in Studio B-Train, that was founded by Koichi Mashimo that same year. And so Koichi Mashimo is the director of Gold Light Tan Warrior Gold Laitan Gold Warrior, and that was at Tatsunoko Productions. Also Dirty Pair, Project Eden. He was the director and series composition on Irresponsible Captain Tyler. And so Studio B-Train, you'll know them for Metabots.Hack Sign, Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicles, and specifically like the Girls with Guns kind of show. So Noir, Mad Lax, and then El Cazador, also directed by Mashimo. Production I.G. kicked off the 2000s with a co-production with Studio Gainax on Furikuri. Later, they did the sequels in the 2010s, Furikuri Alternative, Progressive, and Shoegaze, I think is how it's pronounced. The year 2000 was also when Production I.G. produced the original action horror film Blood the Last Vampire. And the way this one fell out was Ishikawa had approached Mamoru Oshii, who at the time was running a lecture series for teaching new and upcoming filmmakers on how to create their own projects. And so, naturally, students were asked for their ideas. 2 submissions came to the top, one submitted by Kenji Kamayana and another Junichi Fujisaku. And these guys would go on to direct Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex and Ghost in the Shell Arise, respectively. Generally, the idea was, a badass high school girl who slices up zombies or vampires. And it was a very successful formula, very like Kill Bill-esque. Blood the Last Vampire was directed by Hiroyuki Kitakubo of Robot Carnival and Golden Boy fame. And then Blood the Last Vampire was very successful for them as well. So it had a couple of spin-offs. So the 2005 Blood Plus television series, including Blood Sea, and that was actually with Clampet's involvement as well. And I'd say the 2000s were pretty good for Production I.G. In addition to the works I've listed above, we have, of course, Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex, both of those seasons from 2002 to 2005, and there's the 2004 movie. Cromartie High School in 2003. Immortal Grand Prix, that was a collab with Cartoon Network in 2005. Moribito, Guardian of the Spirit, which was, I believe, directed by Kenji Kamayama. They also adapted Holic by Clamp. That was around 2006 through 2008. That has a couple of extra sequels that haven't come over here, but so we just have the first season. They also worked on Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicle film. Kind of a sleeper hit here in 2006, we have Le Chevalier d'Eon. I believe that was a French co-production. Eden of the East, 2009, which was an original work and also directed by Kenji Kamayama. And in 2005, IG went public on the stock exchange and founded IG 3D. And this was basically a company all about producing the latest cutting-edge 3D CGI, also co-founding a digital editing studio, Film Lip, with Fuji Television. In 2007, things got busy once again on the business side of things, so I'll kind of do my best to sum up. If you remember back in 2000, we have the ING company, the one that handles the copyright and such. This merged with Production IG, and then the studio Production IG was like a subsidiary. Well, on the 4th of July in 2007, a merger was announced between Production IG and a small publishing company, Mag Garden. And it had its own shonen magazine, Monthly Comic Blade. And so Production IG, corporate-wise, was transformed into a holding company in November 2007, a month before the merger happened in December, and then transferred most of its management to a new subsidiary also called Production IG, which is not confusing at all. By the end of 2007, we also had a new company named IG Port, and this had the studios Production IG, Zebek, and Mag Garden all as its subsidiaries. Is basically the all result of that. And in 2010, IG Port acquired an 11% stake in Tatsunoko Productions, with Ishikawa established as a non-executive director at the company. And on June 1st, 2012, we have Wit Studio of Attack on Titan fame. This was founded as a subsidiary of IG Port, which is why you see a lot of Production IG and Wit Studio co-collaborating on things. And yes, indeed, Production IG assisted in Attack on Titan, which was Wit's first project. And so taking another tour through the 2010s for a minute, by this time, Ghost in the Shell had pretty much had its standalone complex run. We get into the early 2010s and we hear about there's this reboot/revival OVA and movie project that would become Ghost in the Shell Arise. Also in Kimi no Todoke, began in the summer season of 2009 and ended in 2010. It got its second season in 2011. Third season didn't drop until August of 2024. Also in 2011, we have Usagi Drop or Bunny Drop and Blood Sea. We also have Blood Sea The Last Dark in 2012, 009, Re-Cyborg in 2012, so it's another reboot of the Cyborg 009 franchise. 2012 was also when we got the other premier cyberpunk series, Psycho Pass, which has kind of become, I don't know if I would say it's like taken over Ghost in the Shell, but it's like the two properties are both kind of in a weird spot right now. Also, we have Robotics Notes in 2012 for you Steins Gate fan universe folks. Also in 2016, production and planning for the Ancient Magus Bride anime series began with the OVAs. That was 2016. And then the proper animated series began in 2017, animated by Wit Studio. And then in 2021, Magus Bride has since moved to being animated by Studio Kafka for its season 2. The 2010s was also the beginning of the era of sports adaptations. We have Kuroko's Basketball, Ace at the Diamond in 2013. Haikyuu began in 2014. Welcome to the Ballroom, underrated dancing series in 2017, and Run with the Wind in 2018. In 2017, we have more business stuff. IG Port established a digital publication subsidiary headed by Kyohei Shinfuku, who is a former supervising editor at Mag Garden. So this was physical magazine, and then you had this digital publication side of it. In 2018, Production I.G and Wit Studio, they entered a partnership with Netflix for anime production. So the first of this was Be the Beginning, which was released on March 2nd, 2018 over here. We have other shows. The Wit Studio would then produce The Great Pretender. We have Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress, Ghost in the Shell 2045, Vampire in the Garden, The Grim Variations, which was another Clamp co-production, or Clamp involvement, I would say, for the character designs. And then Terminator Zero. And I think most recent as of this episode's recording, we have Kinnikuman, The Perfect Origin arc. Another hit as recent of this episode was Spring 2024's Kaiju number 8, although this was more in partnership with Crunchyroll and was very heavily promoted by Crunchyroll during its runtime as well. And in August of 2022, Ishikawa-san stepped down as president and CEO of Production I.G, the studio. He ceded that position to George Wada, who was also president of Studio Wit. Ishikawa remains a chairman on the company. And that is your rundown for Production I.G. Now, normally I would just close the episode right here, but this being my first in the series, I have a little bit extra to say. And so I do enjoy learning about the business side of running an anime studio and different production sides. And the corporate part can get rather confusing, so I'll try to keep that more simplified or just any kind of like major shifts. But as you can see, IG has had a pretty busy history. And so it's really interesting for me to track like how things have changed over time. So when I was looking at the studio rundown and when I was making this episode as well, I started to feel better about pursuing the rundown as a mini series to run alongside my anime reviews. And honestly, the more I was researching on Production I.G, the more I was sitting here going like, these guys are rather ballsy. To talk a little bit more about the Studio Rundown series in particular, naturally, I do plan to primarily cover the major studios, so your Toei's, Madhouse, Sunrise. I also think that historical perspectives on studios with a shorter lifespan, or maybe like the endless sea of one-hit wonders, I do think those are also worth checking out because there's a lot of lessons to be learned. So I do plan to sprinkle those in while working on the big boys. So please tell me what you think of this episode and things that maybe I could work on. Just give me any kind of feedback that you think is relevant, and I will put that into my upcoming rundowns for Kyoto Animation and Studio Ghibli and whatever else I will drop in June on the Studio Rundown side. So thank you all for listening to this episode. Again, you can check out our socials on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky, Annie Field Guide, ANI Field Guide, or you can probably just find me by typing in Anime Field Guide. My email address is also animefieldguide@gmail.com. There is a Discord server for you to jump into. So again, for these off months during the studio rundowns and everything else in between, would love to have you in the community and hear your thoughts and just kind of hang out and chat. So thank you once again for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.